Hi there, my name's Edgeley, and today I'm going to be talking to you about inspiratory muscle warm-ups and the controversies that surround this topic. As an athlete, many of you out there will perform some kind of warm-up when you go to training or when you go to perform competitively. But are you getting the most out of your warm-up, and is this maximising your performance? This is some of the questions we're going to talk about and answer throughout this presentation. So, what is a warm-up?
A warm-up is a form of heating the body in preparation for exercise. There are two types of warm-ups we can do, an active warm-up and a passive warm-up. An active warm-up is warming the body up via movement, such as a light jog around the park, and a passive warm-up is heating the body up without movement, such as taking a hot bath or a hot shower. So why do we warm ourselves up? Firstly, to prepare the body for exercise and mentally rehearse specific movements in which we'll be performing in the activity. Secondly, to reduce joint stiffness and reduce the risk of injury. And lastly, to increase the oxygen delivery to the working muscles. So how do you structure a warm-up? There are four key things you need to take into consideration when planning a warm-up drill. First of all, you need to check the specificity of the warm-up. This is making sure your drills are sport-specific to the activity you're going to be partaking in. Secondly, the duration, so how long is your warm-up going to be? Thirdly, the intensity, so this is how strenuous the activity is. And lastly, the recovery phase, which is how long you leave between the warm-up and the activity you're going to be partaking in. You need to also consider things such as the short-term, intermediate and long-term performances. For example, if you're running a 100-meter sprint, you don't want to deplete your phosphocreatine and ATP stores, and on the other hand, if you're running a marathon, you don't want to deplete your glycogen stores because this will hinder performance. So what is an inspiratory muscle warm-up? First of all, you need to know what muscles are involved in the respiration process. So first of all, you have the scalenes, the sternocleidomastoid, the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm. These muscles are in use 24 hours a day as we're constantly using them to inhale and exhale, and this is why they're thought to be very fatigue resistant. In saying this, Aldrich in 1988 discovered that respiratory muscle fatigue can be caused by excessive effort relative to the strength and endurance of the respiratory muscles. This is why there's large amounts of research going into an inspiratory muscle warm-up and the benefits it could have on sporting performance. Many studies have looked at using a device called the Power Breathe, and the most effective warm-up has been using 2 sets of 30 breaths at 40% of the maximum inspiratory mouth pressure. We're going to look at these studies in more detail coming up. So does an inspiratory muscle warm-up work? Tong and Fu became interested in inspiratory muscle warm-ups and its effect on sporting performance. So in 2006 they designed their own study. The aim of their study was to examine the effect of the addition of inspiratory muscle warm-up to a general body warm-up on an intermittent run to exhaustion. They had 10 healthy males who engaged in various different sporting activities and were recreationally active who took part in the study. For their protocol, the subjects were required to perform maximum dynamic inspiratory muscle function tests and yo-yo intermittent recovery tests under 3 different conditions. Before each condition, the subjects were required to perform a standardized warm-up exercise composing of 5 minutes of moderate running on a treadmill and 10 minutes of stretching exercise, followed by a 5-minute free running on the ground at a self-selected pace warm-up. In condition 1, there was no inspiratory muscle warm-up, and this was the control trial. In condition 2, there was an inspiratory muscle warm-up performing 2 sets of 30 breaths at 15% of maximum inspiratory mouth pressure. In condition 3, it was exactly the same as number 2, but 40% maximum inspiratory mouth pressure. So what did Tong and Fu find out? Tong and Fu found that the inspiratory muscle warm-up trial significantly improved maximal inspiratory pressure, maximal inspiratory muscle power, and the maximal rate of pressure development. It also increased the duration they could exercise, so they had more exercise bouts in the yo-yo test. So, what did they conclude from the study? They concluded that the use of an inspiratory muscle warm-up with the addition of a standardized body warm-up can improve the repetitions in a 20-minute yo-yo test, therefore proving that the inspiratory muscle warm-up was effective. Like Tong and Fu, Lomas et al. Had extreme interest in inspiratory muscle warm-ups and its effect on sporting performance. In 2011, they furthered Tong and Fu's research by looking at the effects of inspiratory muscle warm-ups versus inspiratory muscle warm-up and training on intermittent runs to exhaustion. There are 12 participants that took part in the study, which were all 12 county-level footballers. In their protocol, it consisted of 4 trials. Trials 1 and 2 preceded 4 weeks of inspiratory muscle training, and trials 3 and 4 took place after the inspiratory muscle training. Trials 2 and 4 preceded an inspiratory muscle warm-up, which, similar to the Tong and Fu study, consisted of 2 sets of 30 breaths at 40% maximal inspiratory mouth pressure. There was also 2 groups, a control group and an experimental group, who took part in the inspiratory muscle training. In the control group, they performed 1 set of 30 breaths twice a day at 15% MIP, and the experimental group, they did the same thing but at 50% MIP. All trials consist of intermittent runs to exhaustion, which is a yo-yo test, and a self-paced whole body warm-up preceded each trial. This is very similar to the Tong and Fu study. So what did they find out? From the results, they found that a combination of both inspiratory muscle training and warm-up increased inspiratory muscle strength. They also found that the percentage change in distance covered during the intermittent running to exhaustion improved with an inspiratory muscle warm-up, but a combination of both the inspiratory muscle training and warm-up provided the best results with an improvement of 24%. So, what can we conclude from the study? We can conclude that both an inspiratory muscle warm-up and inspiratory muscle training increased distance covered during the intermittent running test to exhaustion, although they found inspiratory muscle training alone is better than a warm-up, but a combination of both provided the best results. So, once again, the inspiratory muscle warm-up is proven to be effective. In 2007, Lin et al. Also looked at the effect of an inspiratory muscle performance, this time from a more sport-specific point of view, looking at badminton footwork performance. 10 male badminton players took part in the study, and 3 trials took place in the protocol. In the control trial, there was no inspiratory muscle warm-up, and in trials 2 and 3, there was an inspiratory muscle warm-up consisting of 2 sets of 30 breath manoeuvres at 15 and 40% MIP, respectively. Before each trial, a standardised warm-up procedure took place, and after each trial, badminton tests were performed and the results were collected. So what did Lin find out? Lin found out that inspiratory muscle function improved significantly in the inspiratory muscle warm-up trial. He also found that badminton footwork improved by 6.8% in the inspiratory muscle warm-up trial against the control and placebo trials. There was also a significant reduction in the rate of perceived breathlessness. Therefore, we can conclude that the inspiratory muscle warm-up improved badminton performance. Therefore, more evidence points in the direction that inspiratory muscle warm-ups improve sporting performance. In a more recent study in 2014, Johnson et al. Looked to study the effects of an active cycling warm-up with and without the addition of an inspiratory muscle warm-up on a 10k cycling time trial performance. They took 10 competitive road cyclists who performed in 3 different conditions. In the first condition, there was no warm-up, which was a control trial. In the second condition, there was just a cycling-specific warm-up only. In the third condition, they combined a cycling-specific warm-up with an inspiratory muscle warm-up. The cycling-specific warm-up consisted of 3 bouts at 5 minutes at 70, 80 and 90% gas exchange thresholds, and the inspiratory muscle workout consisted of 2 sets of 30 breaths at 40% MIP. So what did Johnson et al. Find? In the 10k time trial, they found that the cycling-specific warm-up only and the cycling warm-up with inspiratory muscle warm-up showed quicker times than the control, but this was to no significant effect. They also found that maximal inspiratory mouth pressure did not change to a significant effect. So what can we conclude? We can conclude that the 10k cycling time trial performance did slightly improve, but to no significant effect. Therefore, the addition of an inspiratory muscle warm-up did not improve cycling performance. Therefore, there was no significant effect of an inspiratory muscle warm-up. Limitations to the literature. So firstly, in the Tong and Fu study, their experimental protocol allowed extra time for recovery in the inspiratory muscle warm-up trial. This could therefore hinder the results because they have more time to rest and therefore more time to recover, and this means they could probably run for longer in the yo-yo intermittent run to exhaustion. In addition to this, the Tong and Fu, Lomax and Lin study all allowed the participants to perform a self-paced warm-up. This therefore means the participants could be running at different speeds and therefore entering the experimental trials with different levels of fatigue, and therefore this could cause a fluctuation in results, and therefore you can't actually get a true conclusion if the results are reliable or not. And lastly, the Johnson et al. Study was the only study that actually tested a specific set standardised body warm-up against the same warm-up with the addition of an inspiratory muscle warm-up. This therefore means they can actually test if the inspiratory muscle warm-up actually had an effect on the participant.
So, to conclude, although previous literature does state that inspiratory muscle warm-ups can improve sporting performance, I feel that in the more recent study conducted by Johnson, who had a better designed experimental protocol, showed that the inspiratory muscle warm-up had no effect in cycling performance. Therefore, is inspiratory muscle warm-up effective? You decide.